Thank you, everybody. It's always exciting when we start a new conversation because it's, as we are journeying through different books here at the Stellenbosch Graduate Executive Book Club, where we read for you. We take the time out of our busy weeks to really reflect on the kind of key topics that have happened before. Today I'm joined by Dr. Abhinanda Gautam. She goes by Dr. Abhi. And she's been in academia and in the corporate world for the last 19 years. And she's been in various international academic and non-academic platforms in countries such as Hong Kong, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, obviously South Africa. And she, for example, has been the keynote speaker of the Good Governance Academy in 2019. That was chaired by Professor Mervyn King, which is a friend of our business as well. And she's worked with brands such as Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Massmart, Barclays Bank, and many others in consulting and facilitating. So she's one of those really serious academics because I think she's got 3 master's degrees and a PhD in commerce and business. And she deals with human resource management, emotional and spiritual intelligence, leadership, mentoring and coaching, and performance management. And we're very honored to have you here with us, Dr. Abhi, today. And I think I'm looking forward to the conversation, and I'm going to hand over to you to take us through this. Tell us about this book.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Rian. Suddenly, I'm feeling so better about myself. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. All right, so today we'll be talking about emotional intelligence. We talk about emotional intelligence very now and then in the boardrooms, especially in training rooms, training venues, and then next day back to the square one. So hopefully this session is going to impart some new and useful information to you. And when the session is over, that is going to hammer on your mind and you will start practicing emotional intelligence. So with that notion, allow me to start. This is a very interesting book of 178 pages. I took 3 hours. Depending on how busy you are, maybe you can finish this book in 2 days, Saturday and Sunday. You can utilize your restful weekend reading this book. And Daniel Goleman, we all know that he's the living legend of emotional intelligence. His model of emotional intelligence is the latest one that is mostly practiced by lecturers and in various business schools as well. So, so hopefully this session is going to be useful. There are, though, as it's written, 10 best HBR reads. These are the 10 chapters. These are publications of HBR, and it is a great, I would say, blend of all the topics together, and it's a great storyline should you want to read the book. So I'm not going to read it.
Yeah, okay. I just want to understand then, is it like 10 little articles that you read each by themselves? Ah, okay.
Some of the articles are really little, but some of them are not. But yeah, it's very synchronized, chronological, because one after another, you feel like it's kind of a storyline. So it's amazing.
Ah, nice.
Right. So yeah, thank you, Rian, for that question. So yeah, these are, as you can see, the topics right from what makes a leader to building the emotional intelligence of groups as the 5th chapter. And then there is something really interesting about the price of incivility amongst leaders. So this is lack of respect hurts, morale and the bottom line. And what is the impact? We are going to discuss that as well. And emotional agility, I really found it really interesting because sometimes because of the tough situations that we are in, We try to reduce our negative thoughts, but sometimes it just emerges. So what should we do about it? And definitely the fear of feedback, and the young and the clueless millennials, right? No, millennials are sorry. There could be a lot of millennials in here. I should say next gen, right? Generation Z, right? That should
Yes,
be easy.
absolutely. We tend to move on a little bit, and I think yeah, we're not allowed to call the millennials young and clueless anymore, because there's a whole new generation of young and clueless.
Right. Millennials are old. The oldest one is 40 years old, right? So yeah,
Absolutely.
Gen Z. All right. So I am going to start with the notion of using narrative intelligence, because when I started this book, it was written that Daniel Goleman was motivated to find that how some of the leaders fail and some of the leaders succeed, and that is what he said at the first instance, right, when I read this book, and that is why I thought of sharing a story that is based on leadership, and then I would like to ask you that question: that do you believe that there is a relationship between leadership and emotional intelligence? So that is what would be the notion today. But before I start, Warren Bennis has said that leadership is like beauty, right? I'm making leadership as beautiful, right? So leadership is like beauty. It's hard to define, but you know it when you see it. So all the leaders out there, this is for you. I am going to start by unleashing the hidden power of stories. This is about U2 Band, and I'm sure many of you must be relating with U2 Band, people that were born in 70s and 80s. Yes, this is not a platform to ask your age, but I'm sure you know about this band. So these were the sparky, electrifying energy lads, right? Young teenagers, Bono, The Edge, Adam Clayton, and Larry Mullen Jr. These four started with their energy, with their spark, this band. And even they didn't know that they are going to break records. However, popular for their live performances, the group have staged several ambitious and elaborate tours over their career. But none of the stories are without a twist. What was this twist? Adam Clayton fell prey to alcoholism, and it was difficult for him to keep on performing in various platforms. However, the best part of the story is that none of them out of the three let him go. They supported him, they held his hand and tried to help him out so that he knows how to struggle with this rough phase and come out of that rough phase. So U2 band members held Adam Clayton to quit drinking to battle this depression. In one of his interviews, he said that in our band, no one will be a casualty. We all come home, or none of us come home. No one will be left behind. And he said, "Thank you for honoring that promise and letting me be in your band." Ladies and gentlemen, he also had tendencies of committing suicide, and that was a difficult phase for him. And this devastating disease, what he says, is what what drove me towards this wonderful life I now have. That is what Adam Clayton said. And let's go fast forward to 1986, 87. I'm sure many of you must definitely be resonating with this album, The Joshua Tree, in which they broke all the records and became masters of their domain, both in the studio and on the road. And their next one was Unforgettable Fire. We all must be knowing. This was the fifth album, and they have acclaimed greatest critical and commercial success. And because of this album, they were invited to perform in the US on the 3rd and 4th of April, 1987. But right on the D-Day, right on the eve of the D-Day, they received a letter. U2 received a letter that stated Bono that band's lead singer would be killed if the band played the song Pride, which honors the life and legacy of revolutionary Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. They were not sure whether it is a hoax, whether it is a threat, whether it is true or not, because Bono was about to sing the song Pride on the D-Day, and which was based on the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. Bono thought, let's go to FBI and check whether it's a hoax or not. But unfortunately, it was a real threat. And this was 1986-87, guys. No CCTV, no sensor machines, no nothing. It was just sniffer dogs and maybe metal detectors. So FBI said that there is no other way out. There's only two options. Either you cancel the concert or you don't sing the song. Bono was shattered what to do, whether to sing the song or not, whether to cancel the concert or not, whether to step down or not, what he should do. And then all the friends, the team members decided that they are not going to back down. They are going to sing the song. And on this day, Bono was there to sing the song. He kept on procrastinating that song up until the last slab. And then it was the time. So with his heart racing, with his palpitations, with his heart in the heart, with his race of 72 per beat to 144 per beat, he kept on singing that song with his eyes closed. His eyes were closed for the entire duration. Now the song was over. And then he opened his eyes. And guys, you won't even believe, it was his amusement to his astonishment. Adam Clayton was standing right in front of him, showing his back to the crowd, so that in case there is a gunshot, the gunshot is for Adam Clayton and Bono gets saved. I didn't even look at the crowd. And when it was finished, I looked up. I saw Adam was standing in front of me for the whole thing. What a story, guys. Now, if we think or if we put ourselves in this situation, when in hot water, what kind of a leader are you? Is there someone in your life that you can hold your hand and back you up? Or are you the one that is holding someone's hand, even if they are in turbulence? That is my question to you.
Sure. Okay, that's hard hitting, Dr. Abhi. Yeah, and I guess that asks your notion to say, you know, is that leadership? Is that emotional intelligence? And you know, they've obviously built a very strong bond, and both of them had their journeys there. But for me, it's always interesting to ask, you know, do leaders actually stand up for their followers? And I know we've had some discussions around entrepreneurship in the past as well. And I think it's very tempting to kind of think as a leader that you, that person that can come in and tell other people what to do, etc. But you're really there to enable them to be the best that they can be. So this is such a beautiful story in terms of doing that. You know, how do we build? And I like the words that you put on the screen in terms of saying trust and partnership, relationship, etc. And that's actually what defines, I think, business success more. And I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
That is so true, because, and that is why, as it is said, that emotional intelligence is kind of a hardwire. And I would also say the thought process of leaders are like live wires. Their mood, their thought process, their appearance, their leadership style filters down to the forefront, I would say. And that is why it is very important to understand the relationship between a leader and the kind of emotional intelligence he or she practices. And that is why I started with the notion of leadership, because somewhere or the other, sometimes we say that I am not a CEO, so I am not the leader. And that is where we lack this thought process, because power is not only organizational or legitimate power. Even if you are an expert, if you have that charisma, even if you have referral power, your characteristics, your personality itself turns you into a leader. And sometimes people say that having followers is leadership, and there's a gap. I say that having constructive followers is leadership. And unless and until you have constructive followers, then maybe you're practicing leadership in an autocratic way, or there are other styles of leadership. So we need to understand that our level of emotional intelligence do matter for the people that report to us. So,
And it's
so
so
yeah,
interesting. I just want to kind of also just share it. For me, it's always, those people that if the boss walks in, everybody wants to know, like, what was the boss's mood today, because, if the boss is grumpy, by 12 o'clock, the whole organization will be grumpy. And if the boss comes in happy and inspired and motivated and has that full energy, then it's amazing how it creates kind of a flow state in the organization. And I think that's what you're referencing here, is that the leader does set the mood. I was actually listening to a talk recently by McKinsey on bosses during COVID, and how we are actually not always benefiting from the kind of emotional exchange during the COVID period, because it becomes fairly impersonal and almost transactional, and it becomes harder to maintain those relationships. I thought that was also quite interesting.
Yes, you are so true, because we say smile is contagious, and in this book it's written mood is contagious. So that is called as mood contagion, and definitely it depends a lot on the leader. So yeah, so we are going to take it forward from here. So as in here, it's written that that leadership is not about titles only. So it's not only for C-suite employees, it's for each and everybody that is inspiring or influencing others. So leadership is not about titles, positions, or flowcharts. It is about one life influencing another. So in some way or the other, we all are leaders. And that is why it's important to understand that to what extent we are able to practice emotional intelligence. And what is emotional intelligence all about? Generally, we say that it is an art of managing your emotions and others' emotions. But this art also needs to be, I would say, backed by ability, capacity, skill, or self-perceived ability to identify, assess, and manage your emotion, then others' emotions, and then your group's emotions. And that is why it is very important to understand that why Daniel Goleman says that that it is a sine qua non of leadership. It is an essential part. You cannot even think of separating yourself as a leader from this thought process of being emotionally intelligent. And do you have the ability to work with others and effectiveness in leading change? So ladies and gentlemen, I have put down there in black, in case you see, I have put exactly what Daniel Goleman and other authors have mentioned in the book. And that is what a leader must have: technical skills. We talk about rational intelligence. We talk about cognitive abilities. And according to Daniel Goleman, these are the major requirements to get into that leadership capacity. But after that, if you don't have emotional intelligence, then somewhere or the other you are not turning into the right direction. And this was done by a research, and that is why he came up with these three characteristics, as you can see, out of 188 companies. And that then he concluded, like Lucent Technologies, British Airways, and Credit Suisse. Okay, now this is the most important one. However, many of you that have already attended emotional intelligence classes or maybe training sessions, you might disagree a little bit with me, because this is a book of 2015 and things have evolved a little. And Daniel Goleman himself said that that the fifth component, relationship management, is of extreme importance, and that is why he has moved motivation and put in relationship management in there. But this is the base, and that is why I thought of keeping this one as is. So we talk of self-awareness, ladies and gentlemen, and the funniest part that I think, and when I ponder upon this this thought process of self-awareness, we in case you go for a test for self-awareness or maybe EI, you would score really high in self-awareness. You know that you are a travelaholic, you are a workaholic, you are a chocoholic, you are a shopaholic, right? And you are holics and holics, cinemaholic, and I don't know, so many, right? And sometimes we
Definitely a
brag about
chocoholic.
it. Sorry, yeah, you are a
I'm definitely
bookaholic.
no, definitely a chocoholic, yes.
Okay. All right, that's amazing. Okay, and there are new terms now: Facebookaholic, LinkedInaholic, right? So the thing is that sometimes we are aware that you are short-tempered, you are impulsive, you are too straightforward. You exaggerate, and then we think that we must be given with an Oscar award for that. But I would say I'm a bookaholic, travelaholic, and the next aspect is self-regulation. And what we are self-aware, right? Aware. We are aware that we do this and do that. But the thing is that to what extent self-regulation, these are not wrong aspects, being a chocoholic, travelaholic, shopaholic, but to what extent it is hindering with our process of practicing leadership. If it is not, it's absolutely amazing. But some of us go overboard, right? And those are the things that are more important for us. And self-regulation says that when you know about your weaknesses, your drives, values, and goals, and you know some things are hindering yourself, what are you doing to reduce that negative aspect of yourself? You know you are too short-tempered. You cannot even take one statement from your daddy, right, or your boss, right, and it's extremely difficult for you. But are you reading books? Are you exercising? Are you jogging? Are you trying to calm yourself down so that you are regulating your behavior? And sometimes you say, I am too straightforward. I don't care, right, what the other person, whether the other person is getting hurt or not. And then definitely you're not stepping towards right style of leadership. And that is what a self-regulation that he says. And the next thing, the beauty of emotional intelligence. Yes, Leon?
Yeah, I think in that as well, Dr. Avi, is the what I think most people are not, they don't spend enough time analyzing the triggers to those disruptive emotions and impulses. So, uh, yeah, and they can easily get angry or go off on people in a boardroom or do all of those interesting things that leaders somehow feel sometimes they're entitled to, and one understands it from a perspective sometimes that these are hard decisions. They have massive amounts of money involved, but there's always a way to do that in a polite and kind way. And I think self-regulation, or for me, the kind of trigger theory of self-regulation is a very important thing to really understand what creates those disruptive emotions and where did they come from. Because until you start doing that and understanding that in others as well, I think people will miss this aspect of emotional intelligence quite often.
So true. Rian, it needs a lot of self-reflection and introspection. And we need to give time to ourselves. Sometimes we are in the rush, and that rush never ends. So that is why, as you said, it's extremely important to control your disruptive emotions. And the beauty of this model is empathy, which is the greatest definition of empathy. People say right there, putting yourself in others' shoes. And I was reading another book wherein it's so beautifully portrayed that in order to put yourself in others' shoes, you need to first of all get rid of your own shoes, because we are wearing shoes of a CEO, the one who drives Mercedes, of the one who has a lot of other tasks, the one who doesn't have time, the one who carries an Apple i10, right? And the shoes, we are having our own shoes of a manager that is always busy, right? And in practicing empathy, it is very important that we get into a barefoot thought process. First of all, drop your own
That's
shoes.
beautiful.
Otherwise, you can't be stepping into other shoes, because you are already wearing your own shoes. You are busy. You have a lot of other deadlines to meet, and you don't have time for that person. You say, "I understand," but you don't, because you are not barefoot. So, so that is why, in order to practice empathy, it is not only considering others' feelings, it's understanding. And that is why, please give time to someone that really wants to talk to you as a leader. Just don't just don't, what we say, fulfill the formality. And then it's social skills, motivation. I'll talk a little later. Managing relations to move people in desired directions. Again, there is a myth, right, that socially skilled people are greatest friends. They are the happiest souls on this earth. That is not the truth. Not that they are grumpy people, but they are friendly people, I would say, that have that mindset at the back of their mind to convince you, to talk to you, to make you understand, to take you through towards the vision that they have. And I was talking with Rian the other day, and we were discussing whether having a vision, right, is about spiritual intelligence or emotional intelligence. And that is what I say, that in case you are taking people towards the vision that you have, it's hardcore emotional intelligence, because you are practicing social skill, and you are being friendly, you are and you are making them understand that what would be the effect in case you followed the vision that they have. So,
which is ultimately the objective of leadership.
Yeah, absolutely,
exactly.
absolutely. Okay. And that is why these two variables are so directly related, that that leaders need to have. It's a must-have, right? Sine qua non aspect. So, motivation, guys, it's relishing achievements for its own sake. Now, motivation, generally people say that motivation is for yourself, right? And there are different types of motivation. In this book, again, he emphasized on the fact of Henry Mintzberg thought process, that there are intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. Leaders that are extrinsically motivated, that means for tangible aspects, cannot be the true leaders. Because extrinsic, as you know, that anything that you can touch, feel, and show to others, tangible aspects. People that are motivated to achieve the achievement are the real leaders. Not just to get happy, not just to get satisfied and have sense of achievement, but achievement to seek the achievement, to reach the achievement, is the proper motivation that that he's talking about. So, so that is why this motivation never stops. You are ever motivated because you want to achieve and let people achieve their ambitions. So, and that is why at later stage he said that it is mostly about relationship management. Relationship building is easy, and then you forget when the things are done. But if you are continuously motivated and motivating people, then it is a lot of relationship management involved. Here is what Rian said right now, right? He said, what is primal leadership? It is said that a leader needs to make sure that he or she is regularly optimistic, right? Authentic and high energy mood. Right, it's very, very important that your chosen actions and your way of communication, because it creates hell, sorry to use that word, hell lot of impact on your followers. And your emotional intelligence travels through the organization as like electricity over the live wires. And this is what Rian said right now, that that your moods, your behaviors, your happiness, your upbeatness, right, is mood contagion. If you are unhappy, the organization. So that is what your primal leadership is, your primary responsibility, please, as all the good leaders, right, in the business. Okay, so the next one is a very interesting aspect. It is, what is CEO disease, right?
Okay,
What
that
is
sounds
CEO
fascinating.
yeah. I can see a black thingy on my screen. Can you see what is CEO disease written?
Yes.
Is it okay? All right. Okay. So, what is this, right? As we were discussing of primal leadership, now because of classes, because of awareness, because of information overload, CEOs know that they have to portray themselves, right, as upbeat, reliable, patient. Yeah, they are understanding it. Yeah, everything is getting assimilated. But with a lot of studies and research being done, actually inside they are a different person. It's just what they are showing to the people, so that that electric wire thingy still gets felt by the followers. But people are not blind, right? And people can read minds, and people can get in there, right? That what you are thinking. And if you are pretending, that is like it is said that half knowledge is more dangerous than no knowledge. So if you are pretending, then it is even more impactful in a wrong way, right? And that is why to try to this disconnect is called as CEO disease. Inside you are sulking, you are anxious, you are angry, you are stressed, right? But you don't want to let people feel. And there is what the lack of emotional intelligence is. And it is extremely important that that we connect between what we are actually feeling and what we are portraying to others. And managing your mood and the moods of your followers is the task of primal leadership. We certainly don't mean to suggest that mood is all that matters, right? There is a section in that book, Mood Over Matter, right? So in case there are serious issues where you need to strive, you need to push, you need to talk to your people, please talk, and please show that this is a matter of concern. This is a matter of discussion, of further meetings, right? And you are not happy about it, but as Rion said, that how you present is very important than what you say, because I hate this if you say, and let's have a chat about this, is the same thing, but how we present. So that disconnect is the CEO disease. So what do you think about it, Rian?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting. I mean, it takes me back to one of the recruitment criteria that is often put for top execs, which is a tolerance of ambiguity. And the way that we were taught, I guess, in business schools and other things, is that you go from the boardroom where the discussion is around we need to cut 20% of staff tomorrow, or 30% of staff, and you walk out and you tell the organization that everything's great, we need to just work a little bit harder, and we'll see the other side of it, knowing that that is not it. And I think this gives me that kind of sense of, type A behavior, or breakdown behavior that happens, where the CEO at some point in time can't handle this disconnect and then starts lashing out at different people. And I mean, there's been a lot recently written around toxic leadership and how we recruiting terrors in the boardroom, etc. So that's, for me, this is an interesting. I like the fact that it's called a disease, so I hope there's a cure. But there is that. There's a sense that we have to portray a picture outside, and I know Frick, who's has a very deep view on, if that's not values driven, then what we're going to get is this type of ambiguity, because if my values don't connect with what's happening, the way that I express myself, both from a kind of emotional and other perspective, then people will know I'm grumpy, but I'm at least respectful. That's a hard thing for a CEO to do, is show that vulnerability, because there are people out there that will take advantage of that.
So true. And they bring value to the business, right? So there has to have something that strike a balance between the two. So it's amazing to read the book again, because it was written right after this. that how do we cure this disease, or can EI be learned? And it was said that by Daniel Goleman himself that it is a waste of time. No, this session is not a waste of time, guys, but it's a waste of time to think that after a session of emotional intelligence, from tomorrow you are going to be emotionally intelligent, or tomorrow there would not be any disconnect between what you are actually thinking and what you are portraying. So he gave an example that one of the Wall Street executives came to him, right, not to him, to the institution, and said that he is really suffering, right, because people believe that he doesn't hear, and he's too perfectionist, and he's too by the book, and if it is not the case, then he gets angry, and he really wanted to get rid of that CEO disease. So then what they suggested, right, and this is what he said: EI can be learned, but it should be or rather it's must that you should be willing to know that you are lagging somewhere or the other EI aspects. And he said that he was advised to take a vacation to the foreign country where he did not speak the language. And he monitored his reactions from to unfamiliar people, right, and his openness to people who were different from him, right, because now it's frustration that you're not understanding what I'm trying to say. And he spent quite a long time in there. The third step was executive asked his coach to shadow him for some of the aspects that he does on a daily basis. And then several times he was critiqued how he treated people, and he was given new perspectives. Then he was able to practice hearing to conflicting views. He was continuously given with conflicting views so that he knows how he reacts. And finally, you would not even believe that the executive had himself videotaped, because it was asked in meetings, and asked for his coach and people to critique his ability to acknowledge and understand the feelings of others. It took 6 months, but the executive's EI did ultimately rise, and improvement was reflected. So it's conscious attempts. It's conscious attempts.
And I mean, one of the guests asked if this disease is curable, and I think what you outlined is that there's a process, but that process starts with your own self-awareness. I think, as you indicated, and being open to the possibility that it can. And I came across a very interesting notion recently, which was also, especially during COVID, that one needs to create spaces in the organization for, these emotions, because now what happens is we get on a team call, we meet each other, we have a conversation, etc., and we never really get to kind of not share or unburden, but create a space for kind of grief, loss, distress, feelings, moods, etc. Because it's just like I have to pitch up, and it's 7 weeks in, and I need to have meeting after meeting after meeting. But at some point in time, you actually need to create that space where you sit and say, "How are we doing? Are we okay? How are you feeling about this? What's your real pains? What are you experiencing?" Because we actually live in a world in which that's happening all the time, is people are dying and all of those types of things, and it's affecting organizations. And there's also a lot of stress and distress right now, but we're not creating, I think, as organizations, really the forums to deal with that. And I think especially from a CEO level, they always say it's the loneliest job in the world, because you can't tell anybody in your organization that you're stressed out, because then they sit and say, "Oh my word, the boss is stressed." And when the boss is stressed, then it's really bad.
So true. And according to Forbes and many other research consultancy firms, that we are getting so used to of imposter syndrome. That is because now everything is virtual reality. Now everything is on virtual platform, and we keep on saying people all is good, all is well, right? And that is what we show that through Facebook, through other platforms, that it's all about happiness. But the reality, right? The reality is not even felt because of this outburst of virtual platforms in our lives, and that is why there's no space, as you said, to communicate or to express our own feelings to someone. And yeah, we really need a paradigm shift towards that. I absolutely agree, Diane. Okay, so next we go ahead. And this is process fairness. I am not going to talk much about process fairness. As you can see, that in order, that is what is mentioned in the book, that because it's very deep conversation, that out of 25 companies that they tested and researched, they discussed about drivers of process fairness, because it is said in the book, it is very hard to be fair. Very hard to be fair, not in terms of goody things, not in terms of promotions, not in terms of increment, but when it's not the case, when it's downsizing, when it's layoffs, when it's retrenchment, then the people that are affected, that are retrenched, that are laid off, that are not promoted, they would always say it's not fair. And that is why it is very hard to be fair for leaders. And in one of the sections in the book, it's written that out of a study being done by research scientists, they could see that when people are communicated that these are the reasons because of which we can't keep you in the business, and this is where the business is, this is what the statistics is, and when they are communicated, they feel that they were treated fairly. And on the other hand, there was another business that had paid severance of 6 months, guys. But it was a 15 minutes meeting that this is what the case is. You guys are getting retrenched, but we're getting money. Thank you. And the company was sued because the employees felt that it was not a fair treatment. And it is said that 17% of the cases, people would say nothing, even if they are not getting severance out of retrenchment, if the communication is done properly. And that is where is the human touch that we forget about. That is where we believe that it's all about extrinsic factors that matters to people. That is not the case. And here we lack emotional intelligence. And as I was talking about with Rian, that it's empathy. Can we put ourselves into other shoes by getting barefoot first? So
I also like the notion that there's, I mean, I think we all appreciate that there's kind of substantively fair and procedurally fair, but there's also, I love the way that you're putting it, to sit and say, well, then also take out your shoes then, because I need to be empathetic at that point in time. So there's a different type of fairness, is to sit and say, at least see me in this process. So we can be substantively fair and procedurally fair so that everybody feels that they're going through the same thing. But if you see me in this process, then I think that changes that game a lot. So yeah, it's a very interesting notion.
And that is why it's said that how managers behave or leaders behave is extremely important. Do they explain why a decision was made, why I'm not promoted, why my counterpart is, what did I lag, or do they treat employees respectfully? And that is what I say, that how is very important in today's life. Yeah, so let's go ahead and talk about this one, because why good leaders make bad decisions, right? And this is extremely important, because even great leaders, right, make bad decisions. And it is all about decision neuroscience, and there is a lot of buzz in the town, right, I would say, about unconscious bias. We have been talking about unconscious bias since long, but now it's almost a course to be studied. But we have known unconscious bias. And because we are resistant to change, I would say all of us are, even if we disagree. And all of us have some kind of unconscious bias at the back of our minds. So because we tend to take our decisions on the basis of the memories, on the basis of the connections, and on the basis of the experiences that we had before. We rely quite a lot on those aspects. And generally, that is why we say to our kids as well, I have gone through this, don't tell me. I have also sat in those benches in schools, don't tell me. But those benches are virtual now, we don't understand that. So so that's the aspect, right? That each situation, because we are human beings and we are subjected to decision neuroscience, because we are not mechanical, right? So even if the situation is new, our brain does not allow us to process it as a brand new situation. Somewhere or the other, we connect it with the past happenings. And that is why our decision neuroscience is affected on, or gets impacted on two aspects: pattern recognition and emotional tags. Now, these are 30 different parts of the brain. I am not a scientist. Please don't ask me what are those parts. But we make assumptions, right, based on our prior experiences, and that is why Daimler Chrysler got failed, right? Even if we know Mercedes-Benz as Daimler now. So and that is why maybe Mark Zuckerberg was sued in the court because of the decisions he made, right? So none of the leaders are perfect leaders. We do make bad decisions. It's just that we need to embrace the fact that we are somewhere or the other are subjected to biases, and we need to find our sources of bias. If we kept on saying that we don't have, there is the problem. Rian, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I see one of our guests today is Nasli Johnson, which recently did our data science course, and we had this very debate because even in a data-driven world, it's tempting to think that there's no bias in that data, but those are really issues, and we're seeing it come through, because now what executives tend to do is they run around and say, well, show me the data. But that data itself has its own biases, and it's not future focused, okay, because it's history. So we're finding organizations dealing with issues that couldn't be relevant or isn't necessarily relevant in an ever-evolving world. And we then also bringing our emotions into it, okay? And that emotional bias is a big thing, you know? Yeah, so it's a tricky, I love this area of study, because how do we make better decisions? What are the kind of algorithms and the way that things need to play out to really, and I like this idea of designing safeguards towards our own biases, your own checklists, which you sit and say, well, let's check, are we using jargon here? Are we really dealing with the issue? Have we understood the root causes, you know, so that we can do the things that humans do well and leaders do well, and actually take a step back and not just judge a person on how they showed up in a meeting that day.
Absolutely, and I love that notion of yours that data is based on history, right? And further, whatever is the forecast is based on history, and the forecast is future. So there are errors in that. Absolutely, so true. And that is why we go back to self-awareness. If we are not aware that we are somewhere or the other subjected to bias, or we have biasness, or we somewhere or the other we are emotionally attached. Or are getting influenced by the memories, whether misleading. Here it's written misleading, sometimes not, but definitely we need to realize that. Then only we would design safeguards, and that is what fact is. All right, so this is group emotional intelligence. Good people. If you say run, jump, then people say when and how high, right? If that is the so if that is the notion that you have as a leader, right? Because then definitely there is something in you that we need to talk about, right? Because people are following you, and your intention is to not let them follow blindly, but you understand their emotions as well. And in emotional intelligence, mostly the definition is how to manage your emotion and others' emotion. It is way beyond. It is how do you manage your emotion, then others' emotion, then groups' emotions, and then the organization's emotions. If you are the leader, if you are the CEO, none of the person can be left behind. You are responsible for the emotions or handling emotions of each and every individual. So how do we do that? And it's not as easy as it's written, that it's a group isn't just simply the sum of its members, right? And do you create that kind of norms, right, that support awareness and regulation of emotions? It can only happen, we have to go back to empathy, when people trust that you are listening. Even if it is not like, I will give you an example of Doug Conant, Dougconant. He's ex, and it's mentioned in the book as well, he's ex-CEO of Campbell Soup. And in his life, he has written 30,000 handwritten notes to his employees. And Campbell is 20,000 employees. So you can imagine that he must have written on an average more than one letter to each and every one. And in his interview of HBR, he mentioned that the letters are not like, yeah, well done, congratulations. It's specifically mentioned on their contributions. And people have pasted this, framed it, billboards, whatnot, wherever. And that is what? That is like connecting that kind of group emotional intelligence, that you matter. And so it's not easy to go ahead, but at least we can give it a try, and conscious try. And that is what is first step of conscious leadership as well. Rian, you said you are in touch with Professor Mervyn King. He just loves the concept of conscious leadership. We are leaders and bring business and try to be emotionally intelligent, but sometimes not consciously. So conscious attempts are always.
And I think it's just taking the time to create forums in which people can actually show up as themselves, so that we can mediate the emotional discussion by actually knowing what is there. And I found a couple of years ago, I started a process where every Friday we just got together and we talked as a team. You had to tell one thing about yourself that somebody wouldn't know, something that happened maybe to you this week, or something that you haven't shared in the past. And it was so amazing finding out who the people were that we worked with at the time. And that kind of the process, kind of deepening democracy, I think it's called, where we can then actually start understanding who's around the table, what can we do, what our capabilities, what's our past and our experiences, because those are the things that influences people's emotions. You might find out that somebody has had a tough time, or is truly inspired, etc., and you can start sharing those energies and supporting them, etc., and really start building that kind of trust, identity, and efficacy that you do to this picture. So yeah, I love the idea. Although my wife, every time I try to practice group emotional intelligence, she says I don't like being manipulated.
Yeah. She's playing the role of a typical wife, right? I am with her. All right, so moving to the next one, I just love this notion, incivility, right? And it's dangerous, it's rampant, and you being angry, you have gone ahead with the wrong time. You had a tough conversation with the management, and the employees don't deserve that treatment. And that is why you are as a bridge, right, between the two, and there you need to strike a balance. And that is being angry, being rude, being badly behaved, and yeah, ill treatment, it's not taken in the business. And that is why this is the impact. I'm just going to take you through. Can you see 80% lost work time worrying about the incident? right? 78% said that their commitment to the organization has declined. So we are working with people, in case you are towards that, enjoying that arena, right, of being rude, then you don't even know that people are practicing presenteeism. Presenteeism, they are there, but they are not productive. So, I was reading one article, according to Business Tech, in 2019, 1/3 of the retail sector employees were absent every day. 900,000 employees are there in South Africa. 300,000 employees are absent every day, right? So what are the reasons? We really need to get into the reasons, right? Dig deep, and that sometimes it's incivility, and we need to get into that aspect that it has to end. And sometimes, and that is why I'm going to take you through a beautiful video. When you are in that designation, you believe that it is forever, right? And sometimes we forget that we need to step down and we need to practice humility, modesty, and a lot of aspects, right, that are required as a perfect human being. Simon Sinek, everyone knows, needs no introduction. Just have a listen, right, and share your ideas.
There was a former Undersecretary of Defense who was invited to give a speech at a large conference, about 1,000 people. And he was standing on the stage with his cup of coffee and a styrofoam cup, giving his prepared remarks with his PowerPoint behind him. And he took a sip of his coffee and he smiled and he looked down at the coffee. And then he went off script. And he said, you know, last year I spoke at this exact same conference. Last year I was still the Undersecretary. And when I spoke here last year, they flew me here business class. And when I arrived at the airport, there was somebody waiting for me to take me to my hotel. And they took me to my hotel, and they had already checked me in, and they just took me up to my room. And the next morning I came downstairs, and there was someone waiting in the lobby to greet me, and they drove me to this here same venue. They took me through the back entrance and took me into the green room and handed me a cup of coffee in a beautiful ceramic cup. He says, I'm no longer the Undersecretary. I flew here coach. I took a taxi to my hotel and I checked myself in. When I came down the lobby this morning, I took another taxi to this venue. I came in the front door and found my way backstage, and when I asked someone, do you have any coffee? He pointed to the coffee machine in the corner, and I poured myself a cup of coffee into this here styrofoam cup. He says the lesson is, the ceramic cup was never meant for me. It was meant for the position I held. I deserve a styrofoam cup. Remember this. As you gain fame, as you gain fortune, as you gain position and seniority, people will treat you better. They will hold doors open for you. They will get you a cup of tea and coffee without you even asking. They will call you sir and ma'am, and they will give you stuff. None of that stuff is meant for you. That stuff is meant for the position you hold. It is meant for the level that you have achieved of leader or success or whatever you want to call it. But you will always deserve a styrofoam cup. Remember that. Remember that lesson of humility and gratitude. You can accept all the free stuff. You can accept all the perks. Absolutely, you can enjoy them. But just be grateful for them and know that they're not for you. I remember getting off the Acela. I took the Acela from New York to Washington, D.C. And I got off the train like everybody else. And I was walking down the platform like everyone else. And I walked past General Norty Schwartz, who used to be the Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force, the head of the Air Force. And here I did see a guy in a suit, schlepping his own suitcase down the platform just like me. And just a couple months ago, he was flying on private jets and he had an entourage, and other people carried his luggage. But he no longer held the position, and so now he got to drag his own suitcase. And never did it sort of remind me more that none of us deserve the perks that we get. We all deserve a styrofoam cup.
Excellent.
All right.
So, Dr. Abhi,
So-
you've given us a lot to think about. Thank you so much for that. Ian also says that leaders are not perfect, but as long as you remain authentic, consistent, and keep your focus on positively influencing others in any manner, shape, or form, you'll be okay. And I think what you've also said is, Ian, don't forget that you also need to tend to that happiness in itself. Otherwise, you might turn out to have the CEO's disease. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's just that I think I just have left. I'm just left with 2 minutes. So it's resilience, right? It's also extremely important, right? And how do we manage our emotional agility and acceptance and commitment therapy? We are sometimes in denial mode. This is not what has happened. This is not going to happen. Yeah, and we need to recognize our patterns, what we do, right, and act on our. Rian, you have stolen my keywords right from the beginning. Values, right? Act on your values. You kept on talking about values, and I thought this man has taken my keyword again. All right. So thank you, Rian, for being a great co-host. These are the values, guys, and depending on what you believe, right, is your set of values. It's extremely important that you ask yourself whether it is consistent with these values or not. If not, then definitely we need to ponder upon our thoughts. And this is almost my last slide. Take a look at yourself in the mirror. What type of a leader do you see, right? And then if I say, take a look right outside and tell me what kind of a leader do you want to see, right? And hopefully this was useful to you. Let's put our conscious attempts to learn, understand, and practice emotional intelligence in our lives, in this life of virtual and platforms and all information overload through social media. Hopefully, we'll be able to practice EI in our lives. Thank you.
Cool. And for those of you that are interested, we also offer courses in leadership and emotional intelligence where we explore some of these things in a structured way and give you the time to think through it. Yeah, and very happy for you to have joined us today. And look out, we'll probably do this in the next week or two again. Always coming with a new book and a new thing. So thank you so much for your time, Dr. Abhinanda. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I think you've given us all a lot to think about. And I reckon your recommendation is to buy the book.
Definitely, right?
Okay.
You must.
Excellent.
Thank you. Thanks
Cool.
a lot. Okay, bye-bye.
Okay.
Thank you for being
Thanks,
a great
everybody. Thanks for joining us again. Okay.